Joining us now to review some of the headlines of today's newspapers from around the world is Arise News analyst and distinguished Niger wife, Vimbai Mutinhiri Ekpenyong. Good morning, Vimbai.
Good morning, Dr. Abati. Good morning, Ayo. How are you today?
I'm good.
Yeah, I share OG's sentiments that she shared yesterday. That said, I love how excited Dr. Abati gets about welcoming us.
We should celebrate.
Yes, right? Absolutely.
You'll just wait for that. Exactly. It just ushers you into your segment. And
exactly.
You're doing excellently.
That's it. Well,
it's a catalyst.
Actually, it's a catalyst. Yes. So let's catalyze straight into the business of the day. Of course, as tradition dictates here, we always kick off with This Day newspaper. On the front page of This Day newspaper, the story that's dominating the media today: CBN sacks boards, managements of 3 banks, appoints new executives. Silent on nationalization, cites infraction of Section 12 CFGH of Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act 2020, suggesting threat to financial stability, assures public of safety and security of depositors' funds. So, of course, this is a story that Dr. Abati and Ayo have already gone into great detail in earlier on in the program. So I'm going to move to another headline, which is just below the masthead on the right-hand window. Aliyu. Of course, we know Aliyu is the chairman of the Independent Corruption Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, ICPC, and he's saying, I'll appear in court to prosecute corruption cases if need be. And in this report, he is saying how he is motivated by Tinubu's vigor in fighting corruption. And he says, and I quote, I will lead from the front, and in the area of persecution, by the grace of God, I intend to be appearing in cases, which he also says is most likely a first for somebody in his position. So it will be pretty intriguing to see whether he lives up to that commitment and whether we will see him in court for some of those high-profile proceedings. Now, let's move on to the Guardian newspaper, which, of course, is leading with the same story, the big story of the day: anxiety as CBN sacks boards. This is on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Anxiety as CBN sacks boards of Union, Keystone, Polaris banks. But apart from that is a report just beneath that, which I thought was quite one to look into, which leads FG disbursed 10 billion naira to 106 private accounts in 2022. So while we're having this conversation about accountability and cleaning up our transactions in government, this is a report that's saying, according to govspend.ng, 2.2 billion naira in 27 transactions was paid into individual accounts as payment of September 2022 bulk stipends to about 1,200 ex-agitators by the internal auditor. And they also say that the same amount was paid as a bulk stipend to 2,515 ex-freedom fighters in 13 transactions. This report goes into detail about a number of transactions that then amount to 10 billion naira, which went into private accounts in 2022. A conversation to be had on that. Let's quickly move over to the Punch newspaper. Many of the same stories, but what I'll pick from the Punch is the headline that marketers are set to meet Dangote over fuel supply. We do know that output is promised to start this January 2024 from the Dangote refinery. This is a positive development. Marketers are going in, so that means hopefully some deals are being sealed and we can start seeing some product coming out. What we're looking forward to is the price. So that's on the Punch. Vanguard, very quickly to the Vanguard newspaper. Again, it's all about the banking system. However, I'll take a story above the masthead on the left-hand window, which is all about the alleged $6 billion fraud. Ex-Power Minister Agunloye docked, remanded in prison. Soyinka raises alarm. So Wole Soyinka has spoken up with regards to the news that the ex-Power Minister Agunloye will be remanded to Kuje prison. And he says, I quote, I have made it clear, even as recently as a few weeks ago, that Bola Ige's murder was not unconnected with the Mambila scam. Olu Agunloye worked closely with me, both within and outside routine police motions to unmask Ige's killers. So Wole Soyinka is saying that maybe remanding him in prison may not be the safest bet for him, given the precedent that has been set by other people who have been connected to this case. Now, to the Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust is consistent in leading with security issues. The headline here, bodies of 11 Fulani arrested by soldiers found in Kaduna forest. So just to take the quotes quotes. They said, "I was taking my son to hospital when he was arrested. Our house is raided, property taken away." That's the headman. Now, the army has, of course, responded saying, "We don't kill people after arrest." And Kaduna government says, "We're looking into the matter." A harrowing account of how family members had to make a 30-minute journey into the depth of a forest in Kaduna to identify the bodies of their loved ones who had been arrested by soldiers and have now been found deceased. So we look forward to more on that development. Now, as we round up, we're going to take our international headlines straight to New York. The New York Times. Now, a story that, if you've been looking at the international media today, is leading: Israel to fight genocide claims at World Court. This is a case that's been brought forward by South Africa. We know the International Court of Justice will begin to look at this case. Some of the things that have been highlighted in this report by the New York Times are the origins of the term genocide, which is ironically the Holocaust. So, this is a very, very sensitive case in terms of the sentiments that it arouses once you start accusing Israel of genocide. And South Africa, of course, has always offered allegiance to Palestine. Well, we're going to stop right there for the interest of being able to discuss some of these issues. I hope I've done a good job of giving a broad idea of what's happening in the news cycle today.
Absolutely, as always. I'd like to talk about something. I'm not sure you mentioned, but it's on the Punch, front page of the Punch newspaper. A small story there, but it's a health advisory with regards to COVID-19. It's just right beside on the left-hand side. The fact that the WHO, World Health Organization, have released an advisory that it's still killing people. I say this because a number of people have talked about a strange flu currently in Nigeria. And I just want to remind us about some of the precautions that we took during, unfortunately, 4 years afterwards, we are still not prepared for a pandemic in terms of, yes, a few positives were recorded in the health sector. Some states did really well. But just to ensure, again, just to remind people of the washing of hands, maintaining, distance, ensuring that you eat healthy, the weather is changing, and just to help people really realize that. I think we cannot afford another health emergency on our hands currently, in light of everything that's happening in the country, whether it's money to pay for it, even individuals in terms of looking after themselves if they get sick. So just to really highlight that. 10,000 deaths recorded, increase in the number of hospitalizations, really important to check that, amongst the other stories that you mentioned. Thank you.
Well, just an update on one of the stories we discussed yesterday, which is the post office scandal in the United Kingdom. Now, the latest is that the Prime Minister now says that there's going to be legislation very soon, quickly, to upturn the convictions of all the sub-postmasters who were affected. And that compensation to the tune of about £600 million will be paid. And some persons who got some compensation in 2019 will be given additional 75 £1 million or so. So, that's the situation now. But a number of questions have been raised. There are persons in the UK now who are saying that Paula Jenner, who was the postmaster at that time, should be made to pay at least about £2.2 million as her own contribution. That Fujitsu, the Japanese company, that some MPs are saying should no longer get priority contracts from the government, should also be made to contribute up to about 1 billion as a part of the compensation. More importantly, Mr. Alan Bates, who has been leading that protest in the UK and asking for justice, is saying that justice cannot be delivered by just giving money to people, that a lot more still needs to be done. And so, but the important thing about all of this is that you have a country where there is an inquiry over every little thing. Almost 15 years later, look at where they are in the UK now about injustice done to persons who have died, persons who have been disgraced. Now, the compensation, Alan Bates' argument is that the compensation is not going to bring people back to life. What can the system do to make sure that this kind of thing does not happen again? And as I was saying yesterday, maybe there are lessons that we can learn from that. But more importantly, senior lawyers are saying that a situation whereby the government can just issue legislation and overturn court decisions. Should not be and must never be a precedent in the United Kingdom, because that's what is going to happen. Is it possible to go back to the courts? You know, but what the government wants to do is to issue legislation and overturn court decision. Well, we'll see how that plays out. That's another issue. That's jurisprudential. Yeah. Thank you very much.